Hey, Benji.
Hi, Avi.
How's it going?
I'm doing well, thank God. I had a good week.
It's a good week. I'm happy to hear you had a good week. It's a weird week in Israel this week. A lot of tension this week.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff blowing up in Lebanon.
Yes.
Harrowing week. In a sense, it was good that Israel took a little bit of the initiative this week. But people nervous about what might be next and where things go from here. And a little bit more, always tension here, a little bit more.
I think it raised morale. What happened? It shows that we still can do stuff that's amazing. That's Bondian,
Bondian.
James Bondian, right? And definitely lifted spirits. There is this underlying concern about what comes next. But I don't know if these are strategic victories or tactical victories. I don't know where it goes, but it felt good in the moment on some level, even though,
felt good, and yet it's also very serious. It's war, and these are weird and unfortunate times that we're going through.
Yeah. It's true. My
what do you say? Normally you can cut the tension with a knife, but I feel like now you don't even need a knife. You could cut the tension with a pencil.
Maybe with a bowling ball.
You could cut the tension with a bowling ball.
Exactly.
You need a lot of tension. Because I'm thinking of butter. That'd be a lot of butter.
Like a vat of butter?
Yeah, to cut it with a bowling ball. We need to be a long stick of butter.
Yeah, we melted butter.
Yeah. And what would you do with the butter after? You wouldn't want to throw it away.
That much butter?
Make an omelet. Yeah. It's a big omelet. And then you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs, which brings us back.
Exactly. Some eggs have been cracked. Anyway, overall, my week started very well, actually, with my faith restored in humanity.
What day does your week start? Sunday?
Actually, no, this was Shabbat.
Okay. Well, so you got an early start to your week.
My days are off, right? But we went to the holy city of Jerusalem.
Uh-huh.
By the way, I'm going to tell this story in a really short way. Yesterday, someone said my stories are too long, and that's the one thing he doesn't like about the podcast.
Who said that?
Plony. I don't want to say
okay.
Plony Goldstein. So anyway, I was in Jerusalem for Shabbat with my wife and my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do when I go to Jerusalem for Shabbat is I like to daven by Hasidim.
Uh-huh. And you even say that in Yiddish, by the Hasidim.
By the Hasidim, right. And when I daven by the Hasidim, it's go big or go home. I like to go to bells,
the big Hasidim. Big Hasidim.
So basically, right at the start of the war, I went to the big Ger, or in Hebrew, Gur synagogue, which is one of the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
And they were...
reminiscent of the temple.
Right. They were not nice to me, weirdly.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go to a place like this, it's thousands of them, actual Gur Hasidim, and you. And
I've been there,
they were, it just wasn't working. They were asking me, why are you here? What's going on? Very suspicious. Yeah. So this time, as I left the apartment to walk there, my wife said, "You're an idiot." I didn't know if I should respond to that.
Right.
I didn't know what I want to know what she's referring to. I'd forgotten to bring wine or grape juice for Shabbos.
To all the Hasidim?
No, to our little 3-person family, so we can make Kiddush at least, right? Okay. So she said, wherever you're going, get wine.
Okay.
I'm okay. So I go there. And when I get there,
this is Friday. What time?
Friday night.
Oh, so you're going to, on Shabbos already bring back wine somehow?
Yeah, okay. Somehow. I was on a mission. Right. I go in there. First of all, the guard doesn't let me in, who's Chiloni, and a Ger Chassid says, no, let him in.
Let him in. We like making fun of this guy. We remember from last year.
I go in there, and, it's just me and them, right? And I'm thinking, who am I going to ask for wine? And then after shul...
Is there there's no sommelier who greets you?
No, not tonight, not that night. There wasn't. I all of a sudden, they're coming to me, thousands of them, and I'm expecting all the negativity.
Uh-huh.
And they came in and they said Shabbat Shalom. Not even Good Shabbos.
Right.
They saw I was weird. They saw I was different. I mean, I was wearing all these shiny, shiny, colorful clothing, maybe whatever. So I asked one of them, I said, is there a person here I can get wine? I explained the situation.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, and I'm going to call his name out. It was Shvilvitsky, I think, or something like that.
Uh-huh,
I might have mispronounced that. By the way, first names are not used there. at all.
Are
it
they all
doesn't
the
do them
same?
any good to say your first name. They only say their last names.
They're named after like previous.
No, they want to like place you. I said my name's Benji. Like, oh, I think you're related to Benji here. I'm like, no. That's my first name. He's like, why are you telling me your first name?
Irrelevant.
It doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Anyway, he goes running around. He gets other guys running around. This is like the largest complex in the world. They can't figure out where to get the wine. Another guy comes running over to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think they thought this was a test, and I was all Navi, like all shiny. He comes running over me. He goes, enough with this. Like we don't know where it is. You come to my apartment. I'm giving you wine, and that's it. I walk with this man.
Like, I wish I could call Farah, but guess not.
I walk with this man to his apartment. He whispers to me on the way, my son is a Katzin in Gaza.
Wow.
In San Khanim. I said,
wow.
is that accepted here? He's like, oh, no. Uh-huh. But anyway, takes me into his little house, gets me wine, gives me options, wants to give me cake, wants to give me everything.
What are the wine options in the typical Ger Chassid home? I'm thinking
there was
like
super sweet, semi-sweet, and sort of sweet. Like it was actually delicious. Reminded me of childhood wine. And I came back with this bottle of wine, and I came back feeling so good about my experience. So thank you, Ger Chassidim. You're okay.
Thank you, Ger Chassidus.
Absolutely.
Wow.
By the way, the whole time I'm thinking about their crazy unwritten laws about sex. We'll talk about that another time.
That could be a whole podcast.
Yeah. Well, I didn't talk to this guy about that.
Podcast is a perfect medium for unwritten laws.
Exactly.
Anyway,
faith restored. Tradition. Thank you.
Okay.
We have an interesting guest today.
Super interesting guest.
He is one of the most knowledgeable people we know.
He knows everything.
He talks about it. There
really
is
almost nothing he doesn't know.
Yeah. He mentions that. And also, he has read everything.
Yep.
His life is books. His life is literature.
Yep.
And he's also a leftist.
Yes, he's a leftist. Is he also a lefty?
I think lefty. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
No,
lefty.
but I mean, like, is he left-handed? I didn't notice.
We didn't write anything.
He was holding the microphone with both hands. But it was so hard to tell.
How did he drink his tea? He's British. You have to work through the accent.
Yeah, from Irish ancestry. By the way.
But we get into some like big issues, and it's great to meet someone who's an optimist. We've been looking for one optimist in the world. Well, there are in the world, in this country, and we found him. Daniel Sevitt is his name.
Right. The audience will shortly find out. And he's an optimist. He's a lefty. He may or may not be left-handed. He drinks tea. And he is a YouTuber. Is impressive, interesting, and let's get into it with Daniel Sevitt.
Let's do it.
All right. You know, for Benji and me, each and every episode of Chopped Liver on the Beach is a work of art, and the podcast as a whole is our art form. We work in the medium of chopped liver. But we are aware that there is a world of actual art out there that we know nothing about. But luckily, we know someone who knows everything about it. And that someone is Avi Gitler of Gitler and Art Services Company. Gitler and, which you can reach at gitlerand.com, GITLERAND.com, is your one-stop shop art services company. They produce exhibitions for artists, they organize public art, and they do corporate collaborations where they advise corporate clients and also individuals on what art they should invest in and display. And again, that's both for companies and for private individuals. They're based in New York. Avi himself is often in Israel as well. And I can tell you that my most treasured painting that I have at home, and most of my paintings are at home, my most treasured painting is a painting that was not only advised on by Gitler and, but was actually given to me as a gift by Avi Gitler. And what is that painting of, you may ask? Well, I will leave that for a future ad from Gitler and. Gitler and is the proud sponsor, I hope you're proud, Avi, of this week's episode of Chopped Liver on the Beach. They are our trusted art advisors, and they should be yours as well. Thank you to Gitler and. And we're back. Hey, Benji.
Hi, Avi.
How's it going?
I am doing wonderfully. I am so excited to be here. I'm sitting here in a beautiful library. Mm-hmm, everything arranged perfectly.
The many books in the library.
So many books. I've never been in a room with more books. Maybe that says something about me.
It's a private library.
We're sitting here in the home of our guest. Hello, Daniel Sevitt.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Benji. Good evening, Avi. Welcome.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from London, born, bred, and educated in London.
Is that in England or in the UK?
That is London, UK. Sorry, I should have provided simultaneous translation into dumb American.
Thank you.
From London, UK. And moved here in 1996, so whatever that is, 28 years ago, as a small child of 26. Came here with my wife and firstborn, and had a couple more here, and been here ever since.
A couple more wives?
A couple more wives, yes, exactly.
Amazing. You Mormon? A little. Okay.
That's what I said. I said I need more, man.
Touche, Sevitt.
And what do you do? What do you do for a living, Daniel?
I work in high tech. I work in marketing in high tech. I tend to do a lot of writing. My title is nominally head of content right now, but I've worked in a bunch of different companies, some great big companies, some smaller companies, and do storytelling and branding and blogging and all sorts of things to do with narrative and all the things that seem peripheral, but actually feed in to the essence of the company.
Well, I don't think it's peripheral at all.
And how they succeed.
The story of a company is not peripheral at all. It's a central part of the company.
Yeah,
It's called a brand.
I'm not sure the developers think that.
And I'm there to prove them wrong.
Okay, good. Now, and you're a lover of books.
Yes.
He knows everything.
Pop culture, he knows everything.
Yeah,
I don't think he knows everything.
We'll see. There's going to be almost nothing he doesn't know.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Why did they invent AI? We have him.
Correct. There's no need.
So there was a time before everyone had the internet on their phone, and this is semi-true, that there were a few people who would just call me. People, not at close friends, people who I was somehow acquainted with. If they had a question about what was that movie or what was that thing, that I would regularly, once or twice a quarter, I would get a phone call, and the whole point of the call was someone saying, "Can you please tell me what the name of the movie with that person in it was?" And I was I was pre-Google. I was the Google concierge.
So Google came along and the phone stopped ringing.
Basically, I had to go out and get a real job.
There's no way to guess this, but you do keep track of what you read. Meaning, this library. Maybe explain what I'm looking at.
Can we estimate how many books are in the library? This is just one room. This is what's on display in the library.
Right. How many
if I had
books
to guess, I would guess there's 3,000 books.
I will describe the room. This is the apartment is sort of longer than it is wide at this point, and one whole wall from one end to the other has books, not exactly floor to ceiling, because then the lowest fifth is cupboard space, but it's about 3,000.
And in the cupboards are the books you're ashamed of?
No, I'm not ashamed of any books. In the cupboards is crockery, but there is. So
you're ashamed of crockery? Why?
Horribly ashamed of it, because
what happened with crockery to make you ashamed of it?
One time this shelf collapsed and smashed all over the floor, and that was a whole waste of 30-year-old engagement presents. But in the back room there are more books, including what book readers refer to as their TBR, my to be read pile. So that's the books I haven't read. So everything that's on the shelves here goes on the shelf after I've read it, and it gets filed alphabetically. Everything mixed together, which is it is something that not everyone does.
By author, by title,
everything by author.
And you like owning books, or will you borrow books sometimes?
I don't borrow books. I don't read electronically. I buy physical books, read them, and keep them.
I see. How many books would you say you've read in your life, Daniel?
So I guess it's around something about 3,000. I guess 3,000.
That's it?
3,500, maybe somewhere between there.
Why are we doing this podcast?
Yeah, 3,000. That's it.
There was a time where I wasn't keeping close track. Now, I've now entered everything that's here is up on Goodreads, and so there's sort of. I don't think there's even 3,000 listed on Goodreads, so I haven't counted all the books that I read to my kids when they were young. I haven't counted every single book that I read as a child.
I start counting those.
So like when I was very
Reader's
young.
Digest, it's a book.
Well, so
it's a book. Put it in there.
So I don't count individual comics. Some people do individual
Torah tidbits. That's a book.
But I count
LinkedIn.
a graphic collection. But for example, when I was very young, one of the first things that I ever read was Noddy. I don't know if you're familiar with.
I read Noddy.
Oh, Noddy.
Oh no. Okay.
He had a friend called Big Ears. And
a friend called Bigot?
Yeah, Big Ears. Noddy was some kind of clownish toy. He lived in Toy Town. That was the thing. And there were 24 of those
That's the first thing you've said that makes any sense.
I mean, the interesting about Noddy
There's a guy named Noddy with a friend named Bigot, and he lived in Toy Town.
They had to rewrite the Noddy books at some point in the 80s because the original version was deemed not politically correct.
Really?
I won't explain.
1 second. And what year was it deemed not politically correct? Much later.
Yeah, 80s or 90s, they reissued them.
What was going on in Toy Town? Meaning, what was the issue?
Well, there was a very popular toy it was still around when I was growing up, and it was a character that appeared on the side of Robinson's jam jars, and it was a sort of colonialist throwback toy of a black figure who was called the Gollywog, and this was a toy, a sort of rag doll version with cartoonishly afro and red lips, and it's similar to what you might kind of played in America
should be
a bit earlier, sort of Amos and Andy, I guess is that kind of thing. And in the Noddy stories originally, the bad guy was Mr. Gollywog, as this became,
well, at least they called him Mister.
As this became, rightly deemed inappropriate, he was replaced with goblins. And so now, if you buy, I think those older versions, for whatever reason, are probably still collectible. And people want the as the author originally intended. But now, Noddy is still a very sort of successful and popular bit of IP. But now it's the goblin is the bad guy.
But so who's defending the goblins? Why do we pick on goblins? Why is that okay?
Something to that, yeah.
They are not deemed a protected minority.
Whenever I speak to British people, I learn things like you had a whole different experience.
Sure. Someone asked me the other day, did I know Curious George? Well, I know Curious George, but we didn't have Curious George. I was
thinking about Curious George when you were talking about that. We didn't have Curious George.
Yeah. We had the Dr. Zeus books. I wasn't a huge fan, but a lot of what you guys experienced as kid culture, we didn't necessarily. But then the next question I asked after Curious George, we didn't have. I was asked about Charlotte's Web, and Charlotte's Web was one of the first books we were ever assigned in school when I was 7 years old.
Yeah,
let's go America.
Even I read Charlotte's Web.
Hugely impactful.
Okay, so you love books.
Yes.
You want to give us maybe some? We also like books, but we're not like you thinking about books, reading day and night. And we'll get into what you do, meaning you have a YouTube channel.
That's the big surprise.
That's the surprise.
That's Daniel's
secret. I
secret.
gave up the surprise?
Yeah, but this is the time. I had no idea that you had a YouTube channel with thousands, certainly more than 1,000.
Yeah,
Let's round up to the nearest 1,000. 1,000. You have 1,000 or more than 1,000. You had like 1,500 last time I checked. 1,700 followers. And it's
subscribers.
It's called Guilty
Feet.
Guilty Feet.
FEAT, all one word.
FEAT.
Yeah.
And you're talking books, reviewing books. What are you up to over there?
Yeah. So there is a sub community in YouTube, as there are in all these great networks, of people who talk about books, and they refer to themselves as BookTube. And even within BookTube, which is the section of YouTube that talks about books, there are more subcultures. So there are people who just talk about high fantasy and only read things with dragons and goblins and dragons and goblins interacting with each other. But there are books where people ride dragons, have sex on dragons, have sex with goblins on dragons.
Hey, this is PG-13.
I'm only reading the blurbs of books.
This sounds interesting.
Yeah, so that's a whole thing, and is a genre, and that's not something I don't read a lot of any kind of fantasy, and certainly not. I don't limit myself to one genre. And there are other things that people that read just what they call YA books aimed at young adults, and I tend to be part of the group of people who read all sorts of things, mostly sort of what they call litfic, modern literary fiction, but I also like to read crime fiction, and I read comic books as well, and graphic novels, and classics, and all sorts of things. So, and there is this group of people who are of a similar bent.
And what are you doing on this channel?
So I talk about what I've read this week, or I talk about an author that I've read multiple works by, and where would be a good place to start, or I talk about the long list for a prize that's just been announced, and what I've read of these books, what I'm planning to read of these books, what I know of the authors that have been nominated, and then we all sort of comment on each other's things, and it's sort of very benign and sort of healthy relationships that I'm having with these people. There, of course, in all social networks, there are dark sides where people are very mean to each other.
Tell us about the dark side.
Well, I'm neither engaged in it nor the victim of it, and partly because I'm trying to only provide positivity and good things out into the universe. It's very easy.
That's what we're trying to do here. It's sometimes really hard with Benji.
I mean, the easiest thing in the world, when you're reviewing anything, it's so much easier to rant about why you hate it. That's and people love that occasionally if you do it. But if every week all you're doing is, this was the dumbest thing I've ever had, I can't believe, and this person can't write, and these sentences are structured terribly, and this plot happened is so ridiculous. That's very easy, and it flows much more easily. But I think it's sort of lazy. So I try to say positive things.
Do you ever not finish a book? Like put it down? Like, I can't read this.
No.
Wow.
Except I did this year for the first time in about 10 years.
Okay, what book was that?
I'm not going to name when I did my review of it, it was my video was called A Shocking Announcement, because
then why won't you announce it? Why won't you announce it here if you announced it on?
No, I didn't say the name of the book.
In deference to the author.
Well, so I mean, there's a lot of, if you want to hear my philosophy of reading, I'll go into my philosophy of reading. But there are some people who say life is too short. If you're not enjoying a book, you should put it down and pick up something else. Right. And they say, if you haven't got into it by 50 pages or 100 pages or whatever it is, or even if on page 2 you decide you're not vibing with it, put it down and do something else. So my philosophy is that I try to do my curation of reading ahead of cracking the first page.
How do you do that?
So
you can't judge a book by its cover.
Reading is a hobby.
Write that down, Benji.
Yep, got it.
Reading is a hobby.
That one might stick.
And so I'm always looking up, reading about books. If there are new books coming out, I'll read something about the author, or whether it's been nominated for a prize or something that will pique my interest.
I got to tell you something. It's driving me crazy how cagey you're being about this. I'm going to be borrowing every single book on the shelf.
This interview is shifting gears.
I'm going to keep guessing which book it is until you say, that's the one.
It's not on the shelf because I didn't finish it.
What happens to it?
I'm getting rid of it.
Like, how do you do that? It's like a ceremony?
You're going to burn your
I take it to a secondhand bookshop, make them take it from me, and give me credit.
And you've never done that before?
There are a couple of books that I am taking with it. Sometimes.
Which is your favorite secondhand bookshop to sell to? Is it the one on Hankin Street here in Ranana?
It's in the last time I took some books, it was in Notting Hill in West London.
Saw the movie.
I actually travelled to London with a suitcase full of books that I was unhauling. Is the
meaning you brought the books from here to there to give it to that bookshop?
Yeah.
Now explain that one. That's weird.
Why not give it away here?
Because I knew that I could swap them in for credit.
I see.
Except the day I was there was nobody there buying. I ended up leaving them a whole bunch of books for free, and then paying actual money to take away new books.
What's interesting to me, just in hearing you like riff a little bit about your life with books, is that we're not talking like to a run-of-the-mill person who likes reading. Like it's sort of on some level your life, meaning these are quirks that you have of taking a suitcase to England with your books to give it to just the right shop, never throwing out a book except once, and when that happens, it's like a monumental event in your life. Like these are not normal things in a good way. Like I think it's like amazing how into books you are. When I come here to borrow books, and you speak about these books with reverence, really, some of them, and you just love it, like.
I mean, it's. I guess it's my number one hobby. I don't think the commitment that I have, I spend time thinking of books before I buy them. I spend time planning where I'm going to buy things. I'll sometimes have 3 or 4 sites open to see where I'm going to buy the book at the cheapest price, where I can get it delivered either to America and wait for my friends to bring it over from there, or to England, where I have a friend of mine who works as a pilot, and he flies out to Israel and brings me books, or I get them sent here, and so I'm arbitraging the postage versus the time it's going to take. Also, it's a hobby, though.
Right.
I don't think it's any more involved than the guy who has got his motorbike in pieces in the living room, or
It's
somebody.
a win-win, though. He's a very short pilot, and so he sits on the books to so he can see the windshield.
He has unlimited baggage. He has occasionally come with a suitcase just full of books for me.
What's behind this thing of not borrowing books? Like, why do you need to own the book and keep it on the shelf here?
I mean, that's just a mishigas.
But what lies behind it? Meaning, what in your childhood? Tell me about your mother. What is this?
I'm a sentimentalist. I would keep everything. It's not just books. I have every theatre program. I have my tickets to every show that we've ever been to. I've got photo albums.
It makes more sense now.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing. It's. I wish I hadn't thrown out. Not, you're looking at me upset. I don't throw out books. I give them away. But I wish I had what you have going on here. I don't have the wall space, but it's incredible.
It's down to having a very understanding wife.
Now, what are some of your guilty pleasures when it comes to reading?
So I reject the premise. I don't believe in guilty pleasures in anything.
What is the source of guilty feet?
So there's a song by one of my favorite singers called George Michael, who sings "I'm Never Going to Dance Again" because guilty feet have got no rhythm. Right. And so about years ago, long before I did the video stuff, I had a blog that I would write, and I came up with I wanted to find a URL that I could buy that would be short, and so I came on Guilty Feet with the idea that the amount of reading I've done is a guilty feat.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's not going to change the world.
But you're saying there's no guilty pleasure with anything. That's your theory.
I think there's only pleasure. I don't.
But what's something? Okay, now assume that someone's judgmental like me, and I hear like, oh my god, I can't believe he likes that. Like maybe like what that you read would give me that reaction.
So there's some
what would make me think less of you?
There's some cozy crime stuff that I read that's just fun, and I can whiz through it, and
like by what author?
I know the detective's coming back in the next book, and it's okay. I've read 40 books in the Spencer series. A guy called Robert B. Parker. Do you remember growing up? There was a show called Spencer for Hire.
Yeah.
Sure. With Robert Urich.
Yes. See what I mean? He remembers everything. He knows every actor's name.
Robert Urich's an interesting guy. Robert Urich was married to Heather Menzies, who was she one of the Von Trapp girls? Anyway, that's
one of
in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, in the movie.
She was on the staircase saying goodbye.
I think so. She was famous for something. Anyway,
I believe you.
Yeah, and he was also Dan Tanner in Vegas, which was another great show. Anyway, Spencer for Hire was a TV show which I didn't really watch, but then I met a guy who said you need to read the books, and this guy Robert Parker wrote them over about 40 years, and he passed away, and that's when he stopped writing. Although other people have taken up the mantle and are still publishing books, but there was so I just read them one after the other, and I couldn't distinguish the plots from one to the other. But the banter is very witty. The action when it happens is extraordinarily well written, beautifully choreographed. He's a kind of he's a private eye, but he kind of philosophizes about the use of violence in his thing. He'd much rather talk smack and use his mouth to get out of trouble. But if he has to use his fists, he knows how to fight. Terribly entertaining. So some people might consider that lowbrow. The other thing is I read a heck of a lot of comic books.
We're not counting comic books. That's not included in your 3,000, is it? That's not really
so the graphic novel. So
graphic novels.
Some of them are comic book
that.
collections, and some of them are written as graphic novels.
That's fine.
Yes, but so I'll read superhero stuff, and I'll read stuff. I sometimes read kids' books.
Benji, who are your favorite authors? Let's see what Daniel thinks about them.
My favorite authors?
Yeah, there's no judgment. You're in a safe space.
I like David Mitchell, who we were just talking about earlier. Ian McEwan.
I also love Ian McEwan.
Yeah, like him.
You like him too, Daniel?
Very much.
Which is your favorite Ian McEwan novel?
Atonement.
It's a good one.
I would say my favorite is Sweet Tooth.
Sweet Tooth is underrated and not often spoken about.
Because people don't want to give away the surprise ending.
Well, Sweet Tooth, I found is tremendous. I mean, on the one hand, it's a writing exercise. This is a male author using a female POV.
Also, yeah.
So it functions out as just like, oh wow, how did you do this in a time when men are always being told off for writing women badly, and we're trying to introduce diversity into the, these are values that we defend. Sweet Tooth is a tremendously undervalued book.
It's one of my favorite books.
Works, on its own, and I think it's a super work.
He's my favorite author. I think my second favorite author, and I want to hear what you think about him, John le Carré.
So John le Carré, I'm embarrassed to say I have not read, and I like crime fiction and spy fiction. I've read authors that were inspired by le Carré, but I have not read. I've read a book by le Carré's son, and I've only read one book. His son publishes as Nick Harkaway.
I would have gone with John le Carré Jr. to try to. But
well, I mean, John le Carré was a nom de plume.
Yeah.
So it's calling yourself a junior of a nom de plume is an odd choice. Anyway, I've only read one le Carré book, which is the first Smiley, The Call of the Dead, which I found in.
I highly recommend his books.
I put le Carré in a box labeled Mum. Mumsy stuff, and there are a few authors that I've done that to over the years, and now that you're a mother, much older than my mum was then, I've started. So for a great example, Agatha Christie. I never read Agatha Christie because I figured she was a bit cozy and a bit mumsy.
When you say cozy, what do you mean?
So in crime fiction, they talk about hard-boiled crime and cozy crime. In hard-boiled crime, people get
dismembered,
body parts lopped off, and cozy crime. It may be a murder, but it's in a country house.
Cozy crime, they get dismembered, but there's a quilt
solved by someone with a cardigan.
It's a cardigan.
That's a trope of cozy. So I'm now. I started a project a year or two ago where I'm reading all the Hercule Poirot books in publication order.
Wow, and in publication order.
Yeah, and she's just outstanding.
I don't even know what that is.
Hercule Poirot is Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, okay.
That's
the famous title.
The Belgian with the moustache. And
it's worth reading.
I'm a very, very, very slow reader. And
these are very slim books.
200 pages. Yeah. They are the logic. The self-contained logic is wholly stuck to. So it's really, they work from every angle. You can turn them upside down. And by the time you get to the end and you find out what's happened, you think, wow. Yes, all the clues were there. There's nothing. There's nothing. No Deus Ex Machina. There's no. How was I supposed to know they were twins? None of that. It's all there on the page, and just beautifully plotted, and sometimes funny.
What's your favorite one so far?
So the one that everyone says to get to is the murder of Roger Ackroyd, which I think is the fourth one that I started at the beginning, and it is
Dan Aykroyd's brother.
Outstanding.
Any relation to Dan Aykroyd?
No relation to Dan Aykroyd.
Who's your favorite author of all time?
So when you said you were going to ask me, I quickly wrote down a whole bunch. So I don't have one.
No, I just want one.
I don't have one.
You're going to have to scan that page and come up with one.
I don't have one because I read across lots of genre.
Doesn't want to insult anyone.
And I want to include.
Okay, go ahead.
When I'm listing, I want to make sure that I'm including men and women authors.
Well,
we'll get into that in a second. Why is that necessary? What if the best author is a woman? Why would you then include a man?
I want to have a diverse set of suggestions for people who may be listening to this that they could go out and say, okay, that's interesting.
I think they just want...
My experience is there are some men who never read female authors.
Well, then why don't you have a book written by a goblin?
I don't even think...
you know the answer.
I don't think we need to get to this list even.
First, let's get to the list.
Because I'll tell you why.
No, I want to hear what his favorite author is.
We'll get to the list.
Okay.
This was all a ruse, all this talk about books.
Or a ruse.
Because really what you want to talk about is my giant cabbage collection.
What we want to talk about, the fact, is that you're one of the few, dyed-in-the-wool leftists that we know. Unapologetic. I'm as far left...
You apologize sometimes. When it goes too far.
Not for my politics.
I've never seen him apologize. I've never heard him apologize, not at all. And I think that's amazing about you. You're your own man. Or man or woman, as you would say.
Or goblin.
But, for us, in our community, I'm sort of as far left as you're allowed to go, where it's still sort of okay, and people still get mad at me all the time. I feel like you're over the edge in this community. Among the Datilu and me, you're a real outsider. You're an outlier. It hit me.
An outlier, not outsider.
You're not an outsider. You're an outlier. Apologies.
Why are you calling him a liar? Go on, Benji.
And so,
I'm
like,
outlier.
like I think it would be fascinating. Now, this hit me recently because I borrowed some books from you, and I brought them home, and it was like 6 books, and they're all about like the African American experience, how much they were oppressed. And I called you up, and I was like, like I don't know how to say this without sounding a racist, but like I know that, or like I come from America, like I got that one, like I want to read something else. You were like slightly offended by that, I think. But even like the fact that you want your list to be diverse, like the response would be, well, why don't you just give us like the best books or the best authors? Like actually, like what do I care what they look like?
I won't even know from their
they
name
are.
necessarily. If they're men or
But I
women.
think that's, let's get to the list and then we'll move on to your leftism.
Okay, so the names I wrote down from
Are these all Nigerians?
no
Okay.
for classic authors. Books written before the start of the 20th century, usually Victorian. Though I've read some earlier. I would say Jane Austen. That everyone should read Jane Austen because she's properly funny.
I think we've read them.
She's white, so yeah.
Yeah.
Like in high school.
Thomas Hardy. You're supposed to, if you're a real literary nerd, you're supposed to say, well, his poetry is much better than his novels. and I haven't read much of his poetry, but I read a whole bunch of his novels. And at a time when I was reading them, they one after the other, they had a sort of cumulative effect. He's such a miserable sod, and terrible things happen to sometimes good people. But there's something about the beauty of his pastoral descriptions and these terrible things that happen to people that I found very compelling at a time. I don't know, maybe if I was to reread him now, I might not, but he had a big impact. Recently, I've been reading a lot of Anthony Trollope, who's a filthy anti-Semite, but can write plots and Victorian love stories like to my mind, I haven't read all of Dickens, but I can whiz through a Trollope with glee much faster than I can
What's
read
his name?
Anthony Trollope.
Anthony Trollope.
I've never heard of him either.
Okay.
Like what century are we in here?
In the Victorian, so 1840s,
Okay.
50s, something like 60s.
Does the word trollop mean something?
A Trollope is a slut.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
thought
I wanted you to say it.
I
Okay.
thought you were thinking of Dollop.
No, trollop.
I've read a fair dollop of Trollope.
Well done.
Anyone else? Like they're all white so far. Yeah.
So then the crime fiction, I've written down here, Raymond Chandler, who's the Hammett's probably the granddaddy, but Raymond Chandler was one that turned me on. James Elroy, who's still writing, still with us and mad as a box of frogs. Walter Mosley, who's a great African-American Jewish writer. Lawrence Block has also got a few great crime series. And then sort of contemporary writing, Zadie Smith, Salman Rushdie, Martin Amis, Ian McEwan, Ann Tyler, Ali Smith, sort of wide range of sort of basic
Of authors I don't know except for Ian McEwan.
mainstream
Who is
literary
the
fiction.
African-American Jewish author?
Walter Mosley.
And how is he African-American and Jewish? Is he a convert?
I think like James McBride, one of his parents is African-American and the other one was Jewish.
Okay. So he comes by it honestly.
I think you lent me one of his books.
Maybe.
Okay, let's get to the politics a little bit. Right.
We've often argued in a civilized manner over a Shabbat lunch when you're not reading about Israeli politics or not even politics, but like the prospects for peace, whether there's a peace partner. And you were always someone who had hopes for a peaceful solution, a two-state solution, I assume. So I was more pessimistic about it. You were always more optimistic about it. Has that changed at all in the past year? Like since we're coming up almost on the anniversary of October 7th. Where are you now? What are you thinking?
Okay, I mean these are deep questions, and I don't claim to represent anybody except my own
nor do we.
jumbled thoughts on these things. My essence. So I mean, there's two. You say that I'm a leftist. I consider myself of the left, and that part of that, which is still unchallenged in my mind, is sort of being vaguely aspirationally socialist. So forget the Israeli politics kind of things.
Right.
I believe that people who earn extraordinary sums of money should be taxed to a higher degree. I believe that the government should be able to help people who are incapable of helping themselves. I love the fact that I came from a country with socialized medicine and moved to a country with socialized medicine. The idea that you would have to choose between buying life-saving medicine for your child or heating your house is so revolting to me that I look at supposedly civilized countries like the one you came from and think this is such a falling off of humanity that we're not able to give people free insulin. So that's always been one side of my socialism, that there are things that a government should do, that communities should do to help those less fortunate. And if that comes at the price of rich people paying more taxes or even middle-class people paying slightly higher taxes and having a fewer holidays so that poor people don't have to live lives full of degradation and hunger, then I think that's a price worth paying. So that's one aspect of what I consider being of the left. Another aspect, which I think is more what you're pointing to, is my genuine belief in the basic humanity of everyone who identifies as human. Whatever religion you are, whatever culture you have grown up in, my genuine belief, and this is sometimes the part that people find hardest to understand and reconcile, is that I think everybody fundamentally wants the same thing, which is to
that I don't agree with.
Put food on the table. The fundament. There are lots of other things that we want. Whatever that pyramid of wants is. Of course, there are other things that get in the way, but fundamentally, everyone wants to live in peace, put food on their table, and watch their kids grow up and be healthy and happy.
I agree that every human being is a human being and has the right, basic human rights that are limited by how they interact with other human beings and other creatures even. But I don't think that everyone wants even that. I think that there are certain belief systems like radical Islam. We had an expert who happens to be related to me on the podcast last week. We spoke a little bit about Islamism and radical Islam. Radical Islam is one example that we all know about, where I do not think that the highest or the most basic ideals are raising children to a healthy and happy long life, but rather serving God in the way they interpret it, even if that comes at the expense of a healthy, happy, long life. They want to go to heaven, to go to paradise, first and foremost, at no matter what age. And so I don't think that that's true. And I think that in other words, I don't agree with that at all, but I respect that as their belief. In other words, I think I respect them as human beings, and I think that I take their belief seriously. So that's what I think. I think it's true. I think most people, the overwhelming majority of humanity fits in the category that you described, but not everybody.
Okay, and I take that point, and my counter to that, which is the part that is where you usually get so disgusted with me that you change the subject, is where I say that what you just described as a sort of radical version of a religion which values getting to heaven above putting food on the table, it seems to me an exact corollary of radical Judaism, fundamentalist Judaism, which values land over people, which is more interested in having boys learning, girls with their heads shaved and covered and not learning. So yeah, I think any kind of fundamentalism is antithetical to democracy and communal living and a respect for those that don't share your beliefs. Yeah, and I think we have.
But I think there's a difference.
I think at the moment, our mad coalition government is so enthralled to fundamentalist Judaism that we're not so far removed. Maybe they're slightly less violent, or maybe you could say up to the last 10 years, they were slightly less violent. But I think what we see now every day on the news, whether it's Hilltop Youth attacking our soldiers and burning down trees that have been around for years. And I won't even talk about what's going on inside prisons. But I think there is a strain of fundamentalism which is just as ugly in other religions.
Benji?
I don't think it's unique to Islam.
Well, I don't think it's unique to Islam. I think that
I do think it's relatively unique to Islam. But
the question is what it is.
Historically speaking, the Crusades would suggest otherwise.
That's what I was about to say. Meaning, I think that religions go through phases, and Christianity and Judaism, like they've been softened over time, except in certain like extreme pockets, let's say, where it's not that we take our religion necessarily less seriously than fundamentalists do who are Muslim. But we've come to some like basic, some basic understanding where we're able to like comport ourselves to the modern world and modern values, right? Like as a whole, Christians and Jews. And I think in Islam, for whatever reason, there's a significant percentage that's not like that. Their extremism, I think it goes way beyond ours in the impact that it has on others.
Sam Harris talks about this a lot, and there's a difference in the heroes of the different books. So Buddhism has Buddha. We have the four fathers and the four mothers and the three fathers, but the three fathers are our forefathers. Follow me here. Stay with me, Benji.
Got it. Yeah.
And Islam has Muhammad. And we could talk, and probably some other characters that I don't know because I never read the Quran. But Muhammad,
and yet here you are explaining to us.
The lessons of Muhammad are different than the lessons of Jesus for Christians, and different from the lessons of Lahavdil because I'm Jewish.
What are the lessons of the 12 sons of Jacob? Between the rape, the selling off.
They didn't rape anyone.
The selling off of their brother.
They got raped. They didn't rape anyone.
There was some dodgy sleeping with the someone.
No, there was no rape. We didn't rape anyone.
I beg your pardon. Yes, I'm sorry. There were rapes carried out. There were women who were captured, men who were slaughtered after circumcised themselves in orders. Yes, they would try and fit in.
Yes, there was a raid on
what are the lessons of King David? Who had so much blood on his hands that he wasn't allowed to build the temple.
That's exactly it. That's it. Okay. That he had so much blood on his hands that God didn't let him build the temple.
Sent a man to war so he could steal his wife. If you want to talk about Muhammad, when you literally admitted that you haven't read it and you don't know the names of anybody else, and you know the name of every single terrible story from the Torah, and you want to say, well, that's nothing to do with Judaism, but Islam, that's terrible. Look, I know nothing about it.
Just to defend the Torah.
Go for
it. King David's.
I wish there was someone here to defend the Quran.
King David's actions were a sin. He did tshuva, right? He repented and was terribly punished for it. He and his family.
Everyone. They all sinned. Every single one of them.
The main thing before is that God said to King David that his hands were too bloody to build the temple. That's the message that the ultimate figure is not a warrior. The person who can build a temple is not a warrior of that kind.
So Shlomo Melech.
Well,
good guy.
I think
we're getting into the weeds here.
But I think
Shlomo Melech was a good guy.
Yeah,
wasn't he?
I think
was he supposed to have 1,000 wives?
It's imagine how patient he needed to be.
Was he supposed to be that rich? Isn't there something in there about not being a king? I think not having lots of wives and not being so rich.
I think
wasn't he riddled with hubris?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
That's his sin. That's the sin of Shlomo.
Listen to this podcast. I don't want to.
What you're describing, right, is the problem with taking the text literally, right? Meaning, if we were to look at all of the actions of people in Tanakh as being models for exactly how we're supposed to act, meaning the conquest of the country as being like basically killing everything down to the livestock, sometimes that would be a problem. But what's happened in our religion is, as I said before, is there's been some sort of over time softening to the point where Chazal looked back and they looked at the text and they said, we're not taking that literally. We're not going to live that way. And we're going to read into the text like the religion that is Judaism. In my understanding is that in Islam, that has happened, but not to the degree that it has with the other two monotheistic faiths. So I agree with you, Avi, first of all. Like Muhammad is himself like an interesting character to build a religion around, in that he was a general, right? Also, like he was a statesman. He wasn't just a prophet. And he did some terrible things, like he did, meaning I could go through some of them. I know something about this. But that doesn't mean the religion itself is cursed to that forever. Like there actually have been periods, as our previous guest said, in the history of Islam, where it was a very tolerant religion, right? Right now, like in many parts, it's not. Now, I don't think that takes away from your basic statement that every human, wants the same things, right? There's a layer here of ideology. Like I think we probably agree every baby is born good, right? And
I would hope so.
That things like religion, ideology, your environment can get in the way and create evil. Mm-hmm. Now, when that happens on a mass scale, though, right, you still have to deal with that. Like that doesn't make them less human.
It's different topics, like the topic of, you can say that there are Jewish fanatics too, but I think that and that's true. There's fanatics in every religion, but it's not nearly the same thing. First you can find.
So let's take one.
One
person.
You could find an exact analog.
Let's take one person.
Yeah.
A Muslim fanatic who kills a child. Is that better or worse than an Israeli fanatic that kills a child?
It's not better. It's exactly the same bad.
Okay.
But that's not there's a difference.
By the way, there is a difference. I truly believe that. It depends on the level of fanaticism. But when an ISIS member kills a child because he's Shia, like there are not Jewish fanatics killing children because they're Arabs. Like that doesn't that's happened like
it has
very
happened.
little. But like
very
the scale of it is completely different. Meaning what you're thinking about now, the Ben-Gvir types, right? They're not out killing Arab children, like to kill them because they're children.
We didn't set fire to the Dawabsha family. I'm saying
Baruch
Goldstein didn't walk into a mosque and open fire and kill 18 people. We didn't have that soldier putting a gun to the head of
I think those
a guy
are the exceptions.
Well, wait one second. You cited 2 murders, and then you went to someone pointing a gun to the head, and what? No, it's also a murder, or just pointing a gun to the head?
No, shooting dead a captured prisoner in Jerusalem.
I don't know that one.
I'm sure it's happened.
Went to prison for 9 months.
Now try to name the Palestinian ones.
I don't know the names.
No, but I mean, there's thousands,
and they're all terrible.
No, but there's 3. We know the Jewish ones. That's kind of they're the exceptions that prove the rule. We know them. We can name them. We can name almost all of them.
There have been some terrible people doing terrible things in the name of religion.
And that's different from burning old trees, also, which you mentioned, which I'm sure happens, but I don't care about burning old trees. Almost, I care about it.
I care about it.
I care about it, but it's in a different category from killing people.
Okay.
Anyway,
destroying someone's livelihood who's done nothing to you except try and farm his olives.
Yeah,
you don't care about that.
I do care about that, but it's in a different category from murder.
I mean, I'll put it this way: it's against the law.
Also, I'm a bit,
and yet we are unable to arrest, charge, or do anything.
This is what we had. We had a big discussion about this
because of their religion.
Well, you're going on to another topic now, which I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
Which is
there is way too little accountability for the crimes
100%
of extremists in this country.
Agree.
Meaning those people who broke into the army base in State Taiman.
100% agree.
I think 2 of them or 3 of them have been arrested, which is crazy. They videotape themselves the whole time. 100 people go into an Arab village and burn. And I think none of them are arrested. And then you never hear about prison time. Like this is
big problem.
Horrible.
You know what they should do though? This is a serious thing. And this is something you can take away and think about. They should come up with a word that describes where the rule of law is applied differently to one group of people versus another group of people.
Some sarcasm coming
based on their ethnicity.
No, I do cut us some slack. You probably do too. Meaning, as a people.
Let's brainstorm this. What word would you come out? Let's say you're keeping 2 populations apart, and then if they both commit similar crimes, one of them you're prosecuting and the other you're not.
I think you're thinking of the word apartheid. Benji, do you say apartheid or apartheid? Apartheid.
I say it like a South African, but I don't know how they say it.
Right. But some people say apartheid. some Americans.
Only people who've never
Well, I do.
read the.
I will say, like,
no, that's ridiculous. But
I cut us some slack. Not a lot, but I cut us some slack because of our predicament in this part of the world. Like, I think that particularly in this war, like, we have done probably some wrong things. I know we have. And I think that can happen in war, and it does happen in war. But what you're describing, like this lack of accountability for these crimes, like, I have no answer for that. I don't.
it's a big problem in Israel that, and it always has been, that the criminal justice system is not properly administered, and people should get punished. I think, for
it
example,
is properly administered.
No, it's not properly administered.
Just to only certain people. You cannot stand there and say the things that are fascist ministers, are fascist members of the government who control the police force, who are turning their backs on violence in the territories, encouraging things, saying that we should do more, we should have a free hand to kill as many people. That
I don't think
these
they say
words and the platform there that our idiot prime
they don't
minister.
say we should have a free hand to kill more people. They don't say that. But I agree. I mean,
they haven't said we should take the gloves off. That we should that Gaza should be turned into a car park. That we're not doing enough to take out and kill more people, and we don't care how many innocents die. These things haven't been said in the Knesset by elected ministers.
I don't think those things.
I mean, if you want me to bring you the receipts, I can bring you the receipts, Avi. We have
ministers have said some incendiary things.
Genuine homophobic,
that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing.
Racist nudniks who were deemed unfit to serve in our army.
Is it a homophobic? Like gays won't be allowed to park in Gaza when it's turned into a car park? What's one thing have to do with the other?
These are people unfit for a democratic society, put in charge of our police force.
Terrible.
They were deemed unfit to serve in the army, and now the army is subservient to their wishes. How is this happening? If we want to continue calling ourselves democracy, we cannot include
things are bad
in government these people.
I agree with that.
And the fact that they're including the government because he's under indictment.
Let me take a step back, if I may. Okay. Are you a Zionist?
Yes.
Okay. Describe you're a disappointed Zionist.
No, he isn't.
I mean, the word Zionist has become so loaded. To me, it's a very simple definition.
Okay,
and it's the belief in that the Jews have a right to self-determination, and
in their
that it should be in the state of Israel,
in their homeland,
in Israel. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm a Zionist who couldn't care less about Yehuda v'Shamron. I'm a Zionist who believes that you can fulfill every aspect of your Jewish life and Jewish existence and Zionist existence within the recognized borders of the state of Israel. I don't think it's any frummer. I don't think there's any bigger mitzvah to live over the other side of the green line. I don't believe that land is more important than human life. I believe that Jews deserve self-determination. I believe that a two-state solution is both the most plausible and this is the part that's the hardest to defend, but I would do my best to defend it. I don't necessarily have to. That I think having a Jewish majority state, and this is less a religious belief than a belief based on history, the right of Jews to self-determine in a Jewish majority state, history has proven the necessity of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'd say he's a Zionist, Benji.
He's a Zionist. Okay, we can stay.
And that's the hardest thing to defend, because then you get accused of being a Jewish supremacist and all these things, and it's tough. But
no, you're disappointed with our government, right? Like if you look forward, like there's whatever. There used to be two paths forward that were very clear. One was a two-state solution, where we would be the majority in our state.
That's what was supposed to happen.
Okay.
1940.
But there always was on the fringe, and now it's not on the fringe. Now it's dead center, is the idea that we have a lot of it or all of it. The two-state solution doesn't appear to be particularly viable. I would say Greater Israel is not particularly viable either.
Because our prime minister has thoroughly rejected
I'm not blaming. I think that
because the Palestinians have rejected it.
They definitely have. But
just because
our prime minister has also thoroughly rejected it.
I would hope.
Hasn't he actually said there will be no Palestinian state in my lifetime?
No. As a description of reality, he might have, but
No.
He's on record
as a description of his intent.
No,
I don't think he's told the
technically-
Americans that. But
No, technically, he's on the record as supporting in favor of a two-state solution.
Again, Avi, I'll bring you the receipts.
Can't take that away
I
from
don't
him.
have to
I can bring you that
absolutely
receipt.
can take
I
it
don't
away
have
from
to
him
defend-
because he is not
No, he's
a
made that
supporter of the
statement.
two-state solution.
we don't have to defend Bibi here, but I'm talking about you, right? So there was this idea that the two-state solution was possible, that it was on the horizon, that there was someone to talk to on the other side. And we spent a lot of time talking about how disappointed you are in our government, in our actions. But it is worth looking at the other side a little bit,
Sure.
or a lot. So your view now with respect to a two-state solution is what? How are we getting out of this?
So here's my a lot of the time, a lot of the people that I argue with, not you guys to the right of me, when I argue with people to the left of me, or when I argue with pro-Palestinians, they will accuse us of looking at things with Western values, with a colonialist sensibility, and that we can't possibly understand the Middle Eastern culture and the framework for what community, society, a nation looks like. And it's so fundamentally different from anything that even us try to, when we say two-state solution, what each of those states mean. I have a clear idea. When I say two-state solution, I know what that means. When they say two-state solution, it means something different because the definition of a state. So this is an argument I have. And this is where I draw the line. Because for me, any state in the two-state solution or a one-state solution or whatever it is, the fundamental truth that I live by is that democracy is better than non-democracy.
Okay.
That is my fundamental thing. I don't care how imperialist it sounds. I don't care how colonialist it sounds. A democracy is a better way for a society to function than a theocracy, than any kind of ethnocracy.
But some people on the other side would say that too, and say that in the two-state solution, one state would be, let's say, the West Bank and Gaza, which would be majority Palestinian, and then the other one would be majority Palestinian because the refugees would come back, the ones who left, what would you call, pre-67 Israel, or inside the Green Line, would come back, resettle, and quickly outnumber the Jews there. And so both states would be democratic, and both states would have a majority of Arabs. And then are you still a supporter of democracy?
I think I'm a supporter of democracy always.
But
the situation you're describing doesn't sound to me like anything that's ever been part of the negotiations.
I think that's how they view it. I think when they say really that's a one-state solution from the river to the sea, which is democratic and majority Palestinian.
So I'm a fan of democracy. So there's two things that are in conflict in my mind. I want a Jewish majority state,
Right.
and I want democracy.
Right.
Judaism, like all religions, is fundamentally undemocratic. One might also even say it's fundamentally anti-democratic. If, as happens in some countries, they create laws that make circumcision difficult, that make
Circumcision is always difficult.
fair point, that make laws of kashrut are outlawed because they don't like they insist that the animal must be stunned before shechita. I, as a Jew, say, I'm sorry, that's the law. I'm sorry that I can't follow that law. Judaism, like all religions, they're anti-democratic. Doesn't matter if the majority say you have to bow down to this idol. So one sec. So there's a conflict between my wanting a Jewish majority state and one
But I
democratic
don't
state.
think that's what we mean when we say Jewish majority
So
state.
if in some utopian future we lived in a one-state country,
Jutopian.
Jews and Muslims living together in what I call a liberal democracy, where everyone was free to, I can live in that country. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think that's where we're going. I don't think that's a plausible future. So that's why when I talk about two-state solution, I talk about Israel and I talk about Palestine. But when I talk about those two states, it is incumbent, and this is where I think the Palestinians are letting themselves down and have proven themselves unready to reach that final negotiation and do whatever right of return that is negotiated, whatever settlement swaps are negotiated, because they have failed to date to embrace democracy. And this is the thing, and this is where I'm accused of being a racist and a right-wing baby killer and all these things, because this is my red line, that I want liberal rights, I want women's rights, I want LGBT rights.
You want that in their state?
I want every state in the world to do this. I don't care how this, right? If you want to be a 95% Muslim majority in Pakistan, 98% or whatever it is, majority of that's fine. live your best lives, but do not come to me. I have no respect. If you will, Afghanistan, you managed to kick out America. The fact that you are refusing to allow women to attend school, that you're forcing them to wear the hijab, these things which make this a rogue nation that I will not respect. And I cannot respect any version of as much.
So
and
there's limits on the left.
I want a free Palestine. I want a Palestinian state. I will not accept any version of a Palestinian state that denies women rights, persecutes LGBT, that stops Jews living in that Palestinian state for practice their religion, that persecutes Christians. Democracy is my red line.
I know, but what you're basically saying is that there's no chance for a two-state solution in our lifetime?
Yes.
No, I'm not saying that.
Nice one, Benji.
I believe.
No, I'm not.
So my original sense
that's what you're
all
saying.
humans want the same thing.
That is what you're saying.
When you de-emphasize and pull power away from these fundamentalists that are currently they're elected to govern them, when you say the advantages of living in a liberal democracy where you can study anything you want, where you can be anything you want, where you can move freely across borders, I believe they will move towards what I consider a viable liberal democracy. I think we're almost there. There's plenty of things which are not liberally democratic about our country, but we're much closer. And we have a basic respect for democracy, which has been challenged recently, just as been challenged in America. But essentially, the belief is that democracy is the better way to live. And I think to me, that's the solution for the Palestinians.
So
abandon extremism, embrace moderation.
I think that, can I psychoanalyze you for a second?
Yeah. I need it.
I think that part of the reason why you downplay the power and the extent of their fundamentalism and the poisonous nature of it on a mass scale is because you want to view this prospect as potential. Is that possible? Meaning you like I do view everybody as human.
Me and said I'm an optimist.
No, I'll
take it.
We have to be a realist also. A realist can also be an optimist. Meaning and this is what makes me upset is that I think I'm coming to terms with the fact that they just want to kill me. They just want to kill me.
That's where I am.
And you know what? They're human. Their kids are wonderful. Each one that dies is a tragedy.
Oh, that's who I
But we are surrounded by people that want to kill us. And the fact is that they may have democracy for a day. They may have democracy for a month. I don't see it taking root in the way that you're envisioning it with, minority rights and all the rest, and some respect for national borders and for the fact that we live on their side right next to them. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, that's a conundrum because for you and me, the alternative of living in Sparta forever is horrible. But like, I also can talk in platitudes. I wish that it was like Switzerland here. Yeah, it would be great. I mean, but we don't.
I would recommend that you go back and look at footage of Tehran in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. You look at or read and look at stories of life in Beirut, the Riviera of the Middle East in the 20s and 30s, Alexandria, places that my family would visit on and spend their summer vacations in. We were all alive in the early 70s. You will find people our age who in 1975, 1970,
I used to gamble in Beirut
wearing denim skirts and listening to rock and roll records until the revolution of 79. This is not. These are not countries that have never emerged from the Dark Ages. These are countries that took a swing, in some cases a violent swing, towards fundamentalism, and these things happen slowly, bang, which is kind of what happened with the.
Hemingway went bankrupt.
I think we need to expand our vision of history and look at the last 40, 50 years and say this is not the only way that life can be.
Benji,
and
just bring it back to the literature.
The proof of it is in our lifetime. Tehran was a very cool place, was a very gentle place, was a very pluralistic society until it was taken over by fundamentalists.
It was no democracy.
The Shah.
It was a repressive regime, primarily against the Islamists.
Fair, okay, but again, that may
And
be,
others.
No, it's an absolutely fair point, and that perhaps is where everything I was saying about we don't understand.
But you're saying things can
this
go
culture.
back, just like they went in the wrong
saying
the other direction. They can go back.
I
to
would
I'm saying
look-
this too will pass about everything. I'm saying this astonishingly most right-wing government that this country has ever elected, after years of being founded on socialist principles, after years of the kibbutzim being the backbone of how this country played, the strength that this country was able to build in itself, the meritocracy that conscription gave to Israeli society, where everyone went into the army equal and came out. This country is founded and exists to this day. The power that the unions still have in this country to shut down the whole country. 2 weeks ago, this happened.
That's good.
This is not something. Yes, this is amazing.
I don't agree that that's good. Tricked you.
Look at this beautiful state that we live in.
Yeah.
In which 20% of the population are not Jews, 20% are Muslim, Arabs, Palestinian Israelis. There's lots of different ways that they might self-define. I don't want to speak for anyone. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. My sense is that many of them, the advantages of living in a liberal democracy, the advantages of living in a advanced high-tech society, the advantages of living in a place that offers education, healthcare, the freedom of to vote, suffrage.
Right.
These things. We have 2 million citizens who, for the most part, have not risen up and slit the throats of their masters.
Well, not masters.
For the most part, have not marched en masse down the middle of a chuzah and said, we're taking over. That there are, so that if you can build a society based on liberal democratic values, and we are the best hope of the Palestinians. This is one thing that I always say to Palestinians.
I'm sure they love it.
If you're talking about you want a Palestinian state, which country in the Middle East is your paradigm for the kind of state you want to build? It's Israel. We're a very successful. We show up on the happiest index. We show up on the highest investment for startups index. This is
one of the happiest countries in the world.
This is a very successful country. I want Palestinians to have what we have.
There's a shortage of
And I
used
think
English books, Daniel.
If that message, if that thing got through and said, look at how much you have to gain, then I think it becomes much easier. Like we do for the most part. We spoke about I spoke about all these lunatic right-wingers and fascists in government. For the most part, we're able to shrug them off. Even even in this time like this, because of the benefits of living in the society.
Yeah, I noticed you only mentioned the men. You didn't mention any of the women in government. Would you like to give
I'm
equal?
happy to agree that we are diversely racist.
But can you name one of the women who are problematic in the government?
Tali Gottlieb.
She's a goblin. I knew you were going to say her. She's a goblin.
What?
No, I put her in the goblin category, not in the woman category. That's just a goblin. That's a callback to goblins. Really. So you're saying?
I think that, like, again, you're minimizing the importance of ideology and religion in this instance in terms of shaping the people around us. And yes, everybody at their core wants a better life, more prosperity. They want to see their children succeed, their grandchildren succeed. But the pull of this ideology and the hatred directed at us as the other, which is timeless and knows no boundaries and exists really strongly in this neighborhood right now, is so strong that I think we're talking about really, really long periods of time before they can accept us. They do not get over the fact that we are here. They do not get over the fact that some of them once lived here. Now, you could say, I used to think they used to say pipe MTV into there, give them gadgets, give them wealth. And maybe there's something to that for some of them, but it's simplistic. There's a lot more to it. And you can't deny, meaning if you take an ideology like
I think it's too late for MTV.
Whatever. You can go on and on.
VH1.
There's ideologies that rise and then fall. And we've seen that in our lifetimes. We've seen communism, Nazism predated us. But this extreme form of Islam, this
horribly like homicidal form of Islam, which maybe you don't like to talk about, but is all around us, is going to be something that's going to be with us for a while.
But maybe, if I can tie it back
as I said, there are 2 million Muslim Israelis who are all around us.
2 million Muslim Israelis can't be wrong.
Who are not homicidal.
If I can tie it back to
It's
Daniel's,
not all Muslims.
if I can tie it back into Daniel's guilty feet,
Yeah.
maybe we can hope and pray that the change back to a better societies around us, more accepting and more benevolent, will happen as quickly as Ernest Hemingway went bankrupt, which was slowly
and then all at once.
And then all at once.
That would be great.
So I mean, I think some of what our where we vary comes down to the fact that I remain, even in this year of darkness, in a government of darkness, of war criminals and terrorists living an hour away from us, even in this a time of darkness, I remain an optimist.
We found one.
But I empathize
in the strangest place.
Under a pile of books.
I empathize with the struggle that you find in the face of what seems like the darkest timeline, the struggle to find hope. So I would refer back to this thing I heard once about, you said as an optimist you have to be a realist, so the idea that my dreams are sort of mythical and can never, and there's something that if you want it, it is no myth. I don't know how you translate that in Hebrew.
Well, I'll tell you, Benji, one of the isms that hasn't passed is sarcasm.
How would you say that in Hebrew?
If you will it, it is no dream. What's that? Didn't the Big Lebowski
Guess
say
what? That doesn't always work.
Im tirtzu.
I know, but that doesn't always work in Jewish history. Im tirtzu sometimes led to horrible things. But when people didn't take the situation around them, the people around them, seriously enough. And I could give you many examples of that, right? So the optimism is great, and I'm glad we found you. But I need to think about it a little bit.
I think you have a few thousand books to read.
I have 3,000. That's it. Daniel, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting us.
Yeah.
For sharing
thank you for coming.
your not so secret passion for books, which you have.
Yeah.
I think we agreed. A couple thousand
if
followers.
anyone would like to come over, take a visit, borrow something, my door is always open.
Do you mind that I read it in the bath and the books get wet?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I try not to be precious about it. I mean, they're only books. So the fact that my Mishigas, I keep them. They're not, I have books here that my father signed. I don't lend those out for people to take into the toilet. But for the most part, they're just books. If you drop it in the bath, I'll buy another one.
I'm going to take a long bath tonight. Daniel,
All right.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This was
Daniel.
great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.